Dunsparce is the next Pokémon to take on the Pokémon Crystal Challenge. Let's see how it gets on. I've always found Dunsparce to be a little bit middle of the road. It's got phenomenal HP, but in the stats we're looking for in a challenge run, namely attack and speed, it seriously is lacking. Of course, in Generation 9, Dunsparce did get an evolution into the Dunsparce, and I'm planning on doing a backport video of that relatively soon. But for now, we're going to be focusing on Dunsparce in its original generation. We're going to try and negate as many of its shortcomings as possible and give Dunsparce the best possible time across the course of this run. And we'll start by looking at Dunsparce's stats. We are level 5 with 25 HP, we're holding a berry and our two moves are Rage and Defense Curl. We've got 13 in attack, 12 in defense, 11 in the specials and just 9 in speed. So straight away we can see that speed is going to be an issue. We'll get the Quick Claw in Goldenrod City, which should negate some of those speed issues every so often, but the rest of the time we're probably going to be attacking second. Now that doesn't matter so much on our first battle here against a Pidgey because we knock it out in 2 shots, and then we can take on our first rival battle together. This is of course the first rival and he leads with Chikorita. Once again I've decided to go for the bulkiest Pokemon out of the 3 for this normal type, because that should prove to be the biggest challenge. A lucky crit meant that was a very quick battle though, and we can make our way towards our first gym together. This is Falconer, he is of course the flying type specialist and he leads with Pidgey. Now we're just going to rage in this battle. The more we're hit, the more rage will activate and the more damage we will do. There's no limit to the rage counter here in Generation 2, and combined with a lucky critical hit, we get the Zephyr badge in 5 minutes and 18 seconds. Let's move on to Bugsy. He lives in Azalea Town, he's the bug type specialist and he leads with Metapod. What we're hoping for in this battle is to get hit a bunch of times at the beginning of the battle to make the Scyther easier. Unfortunately for us though, we got 2 very unfortunate critical hits. It's very rare that we don't want a critical hit to happen, but it didn't really affect the battle too much because we were able to still 2-shot the Scyther and earn the Hive badge in 11 minutes and 42 seconds. We can't celebrate for too long though because Rival 2 is just around the corner. This rival battle is one of the hardest battles in the game. You've got a very limited learn set and his ghost type Pokemon really can stop you in your tracks. Like right here, the Garcy has sent us to sleep, so it's wasting time, but I decide to keep persevering. It's always tricky to know what to do when you've been sent to sleep, because there's always the risk that you get sent to sleep again if you reset and it's going to be an even longer sleep. We decline to learn Spite, the move that Garcy was spamming against us, and then we get confused against the Zubat. All the RNG is going the wrong way for us here, we keep getting the wrong coin flips. In addition to that, we've barely even built up Rage. It doesn't matter in the end though, because we do just scrape through on 51 HP, and we can move on to Whitney. Whitney's a normal type specialist just like us in this run, and she's going to lead with Clefairy. Clefairy just proves that the RNG is not on our side this battle because it mega kicks and critical hits, and then rollout critical hits as well. In a rare stroke of luck, rollout misses on the next turn and that gives us the in to knock out the Miltank, and we obtain the Plane badge in a time of 17 minutes and 9 seconds. Now, after a quick trip to the Lake of Rage to pick up Hidden Power Ground, we can take on the third rival battle. This time he's going to lead with Haunter and we've got Hidden Power Ground to knock it out in 1. We're not on a time for the rest of the battle. Hidden Power Ground is 4 times super effective against Magnemite. We swap to Headbutt for the Zubat and one-shot that, and here comes Bayleaf. Bayleaf growls at us, but it's still a 2-shot with Headbutt, and we get the option to learn Screech. I think about it and decide yes, we'll get rid of Pursuit, because Pursuit's not great. And there may be a big bulky Pokemon coming up later which we can Screech at to make the battle easier. In the meantime though, we're going to take on our 4th gym leader together. It's Morty, the Ghost and Poison type specialist who leads with a Garcy and a Haunter, but both of them have already fainted. We're on to the Gengar, and I'm holding the Quick Claw, and fortunately for us it uses Mean Luck instead of Hypnosis. That means the rest of the battle is trivial. We get through on our very first try, and obtain the Fog badge in 27 minutes and 27 seconds. Let's now cross the ocean to Chuck. He is a fighting type specialist, and he could be particularly dangerous. We don't outspeed the Primeape, so it's a double Leer on us, so our defense is already low. And then all it takes is one well-landed Dynamic Punch from Poliwrath to knock us out. So let's try that again, shall we? We managed to get a very nice Headbutt on the Primeape, but we get Karate Chops and we're down to 57 already. This time though, Dynamic Punch misses on turn 1, we flinch on turn 2, so we can pick off the Primate and obtain the Storm Badge in 30 minutes and 17 seconds with just 1 reset. Price is next, he's probably the most trivial of all the Johtonian gym leaders, and he leads with Seal that's already gone down. We have a better headbutt than Dugong, so it decides to go for Aurora Beam, but we don't get the stat drop, and then it's just a case of finishing off the Piloswine. 3 headbutts should be enough, but of course he is going to heal back up. There was nothing we could do about those ranges there. It doesn't matter in the end though, because we knock it out relatively quickly, and we obtain the Glacier Badge in 37 minutes and 51 seconds. Now here comes our big challenge. This is Jasmine, and she's got a big and bulky Steelix. We get the option to learn Takedown after Magnemite 1, that's no use for us, and instead we're going to stick with our current learn set. We've got Screech on the learn set, so what I'm hoping for here is to try and get that Steelix into one-shot range. After 3 Screeches, I go for it and Hidden Power Ground one-shots to save the day, and we get the Mineral Badge in 39 minutes and 3 seconds. That could have been a very, very tricky battle had we not had Screech. Now let's move on to the 4th rival battle. This one will be trivial in comparison to the Jasmine fight we've just had, because not only do we now have Return, which we got from the department store, all of the rivals' Pokemon are far weaker than Jasmine's. So we knock out the first 2 in one shot, we get a little bit of damage from Sneasel, and we're already on to his final Pokemon. Meganium wastes its turn with Poison Powder, so we knock it out in 2 shots, and we are through the 4th rival battle in 43 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's now take on Clair. She is our final Johtonian gym leader, and she leads with Dragonair. Return is going to be powerful enough to one-shot all of these Dragonair, so we can turn our attention to the Kingdra. We've got to play it smart with the Kingdra. We've got to try and make sure that Clair doesn't heal. So we start off with a Hidden Power Ground, but that does barely enough to tickle it. But when this Kingdra's in the yellow, the coin flip goes our way, she doesn't heal, and we pick it up with Return, and we are through Clair and obtain the Rising Badge in 52 minutes and 21 seconds. Let's now take on the rival for the 5th and final time. This time he's going to lead with Sneasel, and that's a very easy in for Dunsparce here. Fury Cutter does a whole 2 HP worth of damage, and we're on to the Golbat. We outspeed the Golbat and knock it out in 1. Here comes Magneton. Magneton's 4 times weak to our Hidden Power, so we knock it out. Of course, we can't learn Earthquake, otherwise we'd have it at this point, and Hidden Power's great against the Haunter as well. He's got a Kadabra, which is very weak to physical moves, so we knock it out in 1. And for the last time on this round, we're going to say hello and goodbye to Meganium as we critical hit with Return to send it away, and the rival leaves in shame as we make our way towards the Pokemon League. We'll heal up our Dunsparce whether we need it or not, and we'll say thank you to Kenya, to Abra, to Psyduck, and to Parrish. You've all been a great help in the Johto region. Get some well-deserved rest as Dunsparce takes on the League. We're going to do a little bit of shopping and pick up our 4 full restores. We'll either need them or we won't. And now let's take a look at our stats. We're level 51 with 184 HP. We're holding the Scamulet coin with Return, Defense Curl, Screech, and Hidden Power. We've got 111 in attack, 112 in defense, 107 in the specials, and just 82 in speed. Those, of course, are the outer battle stats. We'll see a big boost in battle right now with Will. He's our first Elite Four member, and he leads with Xatu. We knock out the Xatu in one shot, and out next is Jinx. She doesn't send us to sleep, so this is a very clean battle so far as we one-hit it with Return. Executor's third up on the chopping block, and it doesn't use Reflect. So far, this battle is going as well as it can. Slowbro gets a critical hit for a one-shot, making this battle even better. And even a critical hit from Xatu isn't enough to save the day for Will, and we defeat him in a time of 57 minutes and 10 seconds. Up next is Koga, the Poison-type specialist who leads with Ariados. Return is going to be the order of the day again for most of his Pokemon. It's Stab, it's very high power at this point, and it gets the job done. The only Pokemon where we have a little bit of an issue is Fortress. We have to play smart, so we start to Screech. The last thing we want is for this thing to go boom. We're going to Screech it enough to make sure it's in one-shot range, and after a false start with Protect, we send it down. We're going to Screech this muck as well because it's one of the bulkiest Pokemon we come up against, and the final Pokemon is Crobat. Crobat uses Double Team, so we're going to use another Screech to make sure it doesn't heal. A Wing Attack barely tickles us, and we're through Koga in a time of 58 minutes and 4 seconds. Bruno's up next, and he's probably the biggest threat we've seen so far in this run. Much like Chuck, he is of course a fighting-type specialist, so we're going to start off by taking advantage of the fact that Hitmontop does not have a fighting move. We used 3 defense curls and then we get to attacking. It was a range on the Hitmontop, so he took a little bit of extra damage, but fortunately for us, Hitmonlee goes down with a critical hit. Hitmonchan gives us guaranteed damage from Muck Punch, but those defense curls means it barely tickles us, and Cross Chop does not critical hit. That means that Machamp is now in a healing loop, and there is nothing more that Bruno can do. His final Onyx is going to be harmless, even a Sandstorm can't save the day, and we are through Bruno in a time of 58 minutes and 59 seconds. Let's now take on Karen. She is our final Elite Four member and she leads with Umbreon. We've done the HP up trick to try and prevent Umbreon using Sand Attack. Unfortunately, we end up confused, but we're still able to one-shot the Umbreon after a couple of screeches, and up next is Vileplume. We hit ourselves in confusion, but Stun Spore misses and we critical hit on the very next turn. The third Pokemon is Gengar. It swears at us, so that's a simple one-shot with Hidden Power Ground, and then we're on to the Murkrow. And now we are on a clock for the rest of the battle, but we one-shot the Murkrow and here comes the Houndoom. But this is where Dunsparce's relatively low attack shows. We don't one-shot the Houndoom on turn 1, and it was only because of a very lucky high roll on turn 2 that we were able to get through Karen and defeat the League in 1 hour and 13 seconds. Up next though is Lance, the Liar with the Flyers, and he's going to lead with Gyarados. We've replaced Screech with Rollout on the learn set at this point, and we're going to start off with a Defense Curl, and then we're going to get rolling. This is going to be our best way to get through Lance. There's no way we would survive the Dragonites with those Thunder Waves, so we've just got to hope that all our rollouts hit. With 3 Pokemon down so far and it's looking good, Wing Attack tickles us a little bit, but we've still got well over half our HP as the Charizard comes out. We've got to restart the rollout, but Charizard is 4 times weak to rollout, and that just leaves Dragonite left to go. He locks himself into Outrage and rollout hits once more, and we are through the League in a time of 1 hour, 1 minute and 18 seconds, and our Hall of Fame time is 1 hour, 1 minute and 34 seconds. That's a very good time considering its stats, but there's still more to come, so don't you dare go anywhere. Kanto is next. And we rejoin the action here in Vermilion City, where the first thing we do in Kanto is the last thing we do in Johto. We're going to get another rare candy, this time from the chairman of the Pokemon Fan Club. And with that, we'll make a very quick trip across that tiny bit of ocean and take on Lieutenant Surge. He's our first Cantonian gym leader, and he leads with Raichu. Now, in this Cantonian Gym Gauntlet, I have something else to talk about. It's becoming tradition here on the channel to use this part of the run to just chat about anything we like. And the topic of backporting is on my mind for this particular run. At the very top of the video, I mentioned Dunsparce and its backport, and just how good that is compared to Dunsparce. And that's made me think about power creep in Pokemon in general. Of course, we're only in the 2nd generation of Pokemon games here, and a lot of the moves are very, very basic and very perfunctory. Moves like Dynamic Punch, for instance, have 50% accuracy to counter its guaranteed confusion. The same goes for Zap Cannon and its guaranteed paralysis. And that makes me think that a lot of the backported Pokemon we run absolutely do not deserve a place on our main run leaderboard. Something like the Dunsparce, for instance, will have access to a lot of incredibly powerful moves, but I think that has its place in Generation 2 on its own separate leaderboard. Now, I did pilot some backports at the very end of last year. The Abomasnow video made it to air, but I really don't think I went about it the correct way. Instead of doing it in tandem with the main run leaderboards and the main videos, I'm thinking about every so often when the inspiration takes me, we'll have a 3rd bonus video in particular weeks, where we run a backported Pokemon and see just how much it destroys the game. There are certain Pokemon we can run, like Zangoose and Flamigo, who absolutely annihilate everything that comes in front of them. And then there are other Pokemon who could easily fit into the Generation 2 decks in the state they were introduced in without being far too powerful. And what I want to know is which of the 2 types of backports would you like me to prioritise? We could go all out power with some of the Pokemon like Zangoose and Flamigo, who are pretty much guaranteed under 130, maybe even under 120, or in some cases under 110. Or do you want to go for the more middle of the road Pokemon? Those who really do feel like they fit the Generation 2 vibe. There's nothing too broken about them and it's going to be more of a challenge. We're going to have to think about what we do. The run that comes to mind when I think about that especially is the Abomasnow run. That 4 times weakness to fire really did hold it back for the Charizard, and if memory serves me correctly, we actually had to go to Buena and get a lot of rare candies from her just to make it over the finish line. So really, the choice is yours. We can definitely focus on one or the other, or we can have a healthy mix. But in order for me to know what would be most preferred here on the channel, you're gonna have to let me know down in the comments. I'll read all of the comments and take some inspiration, and I'm absolutely sure that we'll have an awful lot of fun, both in streams and in the pre-recorded videos, seeing just how well, or badly in some cases, these Pokemon that aren't originally in the Generation 2 games get along in their challenge to defeat the Pokemon League and eventually defeat Red. But with that, let's turn our attention back to the run we're doing at the moment, and let's take on Blue. He is our final gym leader, and he leads with Pidgeot. We've not made any changes to the learn set at all in Kanto. We're still rocking the Defense Curl rollout strategy, and we're trying it against Pidgeot. We eventually knock it out in 2, and the second Pokemon is Alakazam. Alakazam sets up a Reflect, but it's not enough to save it as we one-shot that, and here comes Rhydon. Rhydon is a little bit problematic with that Reflect, but we still knock it out in 2 shots, and more importantly, we don't get Sandstormed. We get back to building the rollout against the Gyarados, and once he's caught in a healing loop, it's all over bar the singing for the Gyarados. We knock it out in 3 shots, and we're on a very powerful rollout for the Executor. It goes down in 1 shot, and the final Pokemon is Arcanine. Arcanine hits us with a critical hit Flamethrower, but rollout is super effective to knock it out in 1, and we obtain the Earth Badge in a time of 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 43 seconds. And that just leaves Red between us and our final time. He is of course the final boss of the game, and he leads with Pikachu. And instantly we encounter a problem. We don't outspeed the Pikachu, and we can't one-shot the Pikachu. And that makes setting up particularly hard. If we're going for curl-out strategies, then we need 3 turns to go in our favour, and every single time something goes wrong. We've already used 6 of our rare candies to try and defeat this Pikachu. At level 70 we can change track a little bit and try to set up against the Peskeon instead, because we can one-shot Pikachu with Return at this level. But then Peskeon sets up a Reflect, and we don't have the HP to deal with the Psychic. We're using all of our rare candies now, and we're up to level 74. We go back to trying to set up against the Pikachu. It really was no use setting up against Espeon. The Reflect and the Psychics knocked us out every single time. Instead, we're hoping for the Quick Claw procs. We get to see the Snorlax at level 74, and we knock it out in a single rollout. This is looking really good so far. We try the rollout strategy against the Venusaur again, but it's barely tickling us, and Solar Beam hits us like a truck. And with that, I throw in the towel. I decide to go to Goldenrod City, get ourselves Thunderbolt, because that's going to be super effective against 2 of Red's Pokemon, and I also buy a bunch of rare candies off Buena. We use 3 of them, and as a Hail Mary, I decide for one last time we're gonna try the curl out strategy. Maybe those extra 3 levels are all we needed to get through to the end of Red. We get through the Pikachu and we defeat the Espeon. Up next is Snorlax, and we know that that's a one-shot with rollout at this power. The next Pokemon is Venusaur, and this time we are on a rollout chain. We knock it out in 1, and we get to see the Charizard. Charizard is of course 4 times weak to rollouts, but we don't knock it out on turn 1. A lucky Quick Claw proc means we're at least onto the Blastoise. Blastoise uses Surf, we survive on 3 HP to knock it out, and we have defeated Red in a time of 1 hour 29 minutes and 10 seconds. That Red time was more down to luck than skill, but let's see where it places us on the leaderboard. We're in a very respectable 20th place, just behind Machamp and just ahead of Feraligatr. That pushes poor old Magmar into the page 3 drop zone, and dropping down onto page 3 is Weezing. We've still got poor Shuckle down there in 76th place, and on the first page of the leaderboard there is going to be absolutely no change. It's still Giraffara Gerudo in top spot, Scyther in second, Lapras in third, and of course we have Farfetch'd in the page 1 drop zone. It's getting harder and harder for a Pokemon to make it on page 1, so when we do make it there we know it's very special. But with that, we are done. So if you have enjoyed this run, then please do consider leaving a like. If you want to see more runs like this, then make sure to subscribe. If you've got anything to say about this run, then leave it in the comments below. And until next time where we're running a Azumarill, I'll say thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all very, very soon.